Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of Book Time with Elvis with me, Mark. And also welcome to the third part of the Interrail Eurorail book tag, though I'm thinking of dropping the word book as a lot of the prompts really don't have much to do with books and reading, but more to just kind of, find out a bit more about fellow booktubers and people who do the tag and, and also I hope a bit of fun. I'm quite happy to do this tag as long as people enjoy watching it and doing it. So, part 3. If you remember, we pick up our journey in Genoa, the birthplace of Christopher Columbus. A UNESCO listed World Heritage Site, the Via Garibaldi, is one of the most important streets in Genoa, and is famous for a large amount of palaces and fine architecture. Tell us about the main street in your town or city. What can you see and do there? Well, I live on the main street in my town. It's called Komenskeho. It's named after the famous Czech, I don't know, what would you call him, educationalist or educational pioneer from the, 16th or 17th century? Johannes Amos Comenius, or Jan Amos Komensky. And the town's pretty small. It's just under 10,000 people, but we do have a few things on the main street. We have an old monastery, which is soon to become, I think, a microbrewery. We have a nice example of an old traditional wooden house that used to be a souvenir shop, but sadly has closed down. We have a nice, I think it's 4-star hotel just opposite where I live, called Rajska Zarada, or Paradise Garden, and it's got some beautiful views of the valley and the river that runs through this town, as well as a spa, and it's quite popular for spa breaks and things like that. And what else? We have the town hall, we have the war memorial, which I've mentioned a couple of times on these videos. And I think a couple of there's definitely a cafe and a few places to eat, as well as some kind of convenience style shops or small supermarkets. So all in all, it's not too bad. It leads down from the main bus station all the way to the town square. And of course, I guess the best thing about it is I live here as well. So, and I noticed recently, because my building's fairly old. I mean, well, not that old, I suppose, in European terms. It's, I think, end of the 19th century, but it's just had a facelift. And it's quite funny at this time in the summer, because we do have a few tourists who come to the town, and they've been stopping outside recently taking photos of the new facade since it's been cleaned up. And I must say, it is very beautiful. I might have to find a way to show it to you. But it's quite funny when I go out to walk Elvis and there's some people standing out there, taking photos with their camera. Anyway, moving on. This next prompt is really long because I have to kind of include a story to get to the question. You can of course skip my story if you want and just go straight on to the prompt. But anyway, from Genoa we move on to Milan. And this is my little story that leads us into the next prompt. Around 20 years ago I was interrailing, and we were in Hamburg. And as someone who supposedly spoke German, because at the time I was studying it at university, I was asked by my travelling companions to buy tickets from Hamburg to Milan. The woman at the ticket counter didn't understand me. So I said, Milan, 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 Milano, and then she responded, Merano, and I said, yes, Merano, thinking that was the German name for the city of Milan. So we took our train from Hamburg to Merano. We changed at somewhere called Bolzano onto this tiny train. And it soon became pretty clear that I had messed up, because we were heading into the mountains, and this tiny train didn't seem like it would be going to a big metropolis. And certainly when we were a few minutes out and it still looked very countrified, we realized I'd messed up. It was a very nice town, for the record, but actually it was kind of a weird place back then, because it was before the introduction of the euro, and the only thing that felt Italian about it was the fact it had lira. Otherwise, it was basically an Austrian enclave. People looked Austrian. A lot of them were speaking German to each other. The cars had Austrian registrations, but it was in fact in Italy. Anyway, for those who need to know, the German for Milan is Miland. And yeah, so you learn something new. And I was just wondering, have you got any examples of your own of funny misunderstandings, either at home or abroad? So, Milan is one of the fashion capitals of the world. Could you tell us about your fashion sense? And is fashion and style important to you? Well, I'm sure those of you who've watched this video for any length of time know that fashion really isn't very important to me. I don't consciously think about it, really. I like to look smart when the occasion dictates it. But my general home attire, for example, is literally a t-shirt and shorts. I don't like wearing trousers at home, so I pretty much always wear shorts, even in the winter. Though of course I do put trousers on when I go out. But no, I'm not particularly dictated by fashion. I did like it when I was a teenager, in my late teens, and I was at boarding school, to have, brands and things like that. But as I've got older, that really isn't important to me at all. While in Milan, it would be a great shame not to stop at the convent on the Piazza Santa Maria della Grazia, as here you can view one of Leonardo da Vinci's most famous works, The Last Supper. Can you tell us about a particularly memorable, good or bad, meal that you've had, and why was it so memorable? Well, I've had a few. I had a really memorable meal in China. I was visiting a friend of mine. It was during Chinese New Year, and she took me to spend time with her family and friends. And we went to this quite posh apartment block, and it was really strange because I think the older generation hadn't lived there that long. It was all quite new, and they'd moved in from rural areas, and they had a thing against heating. And it was quite cold in Chengdu in, I can't remember if it was the end of January, beginning of February. And yet they insisted on having all the windows open, and we were on quite a high floor as well. And so they had all these windows open, and I had to wear, we had to keep our jackets on and stuff like that. And, everybody was dressed up, looking smart. And yet it was just really bizarre because we were asked what we wanted to drink, and it had to be, of course, something alcoholic. And so the host of the party, he imported Japanese whiskeys. So he said, okay, you can, drink some whiskey. And I thought, we'll just get a little glass. No. He filled up a normal size glass and filled it up. And then at each place setting were these, glasses of whiskey. And for the men, there was like a box of cigarettes and all this kind of stuff. The women all looked glamorous, big hooped earrings, nicely newly manicured nails and things like this. So the men are drinking whiskey and smoking between courses. And then they brought out a traditional delicacy, which in that part of China is barbecued rabbit's heads. And they pretty much put this bowl down and everybody dived into it. So you had all these, as I say, lovely dressed and made up women with beautiful nails grabbing these rabbit heads. I apologize to any vegetarians and vegans watching, kind of ripping them open, sucking things out, chewing it. I was just sitting there thinking, oh my God, But that's part of it, It might not be to your taste necessarily, but that's one of the joys of travel, isn't it? Experiencing different things. So all in all, it was quite a good experience from what I remember, because after, of course, many whiskies, it was quite hard. It was quite hard to do so. But I did find it very strange how people literally smoked and ate during that meal as well. And they were downing the whiskies like every time someone did a cheers or whatever. So it was very, very hard, but very, very interesting. And the food was really good, despite the charred and barbecued rabbit heads. So I think I'll leave it at that one. I could go on, but I'll save it for next time. So, two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scene, of course, is a line from Romeo and Juliet by Shakespeare, and fair Verona is where we lay our next prompt too, as it is here you stop upon leaving Milan, en route to Venice. Have you read much Shakespeare, and what's your favourite play by the bard? Well, I have to say I haven't read much Shakespeare. off my own back. It's usually been for school, so I've read things like Julius Caesar, Othello, Henry V, etc. And I would say Henry V would be my favourite play by Shakespeare. I found it a lot of fun. I also enjoyed watching the film adaptation at the time with Kenneth Branagh, and yeah, it's just a nice and fun play, and you know, being English as well, it's quite, you know, patriotic and interesting. So here we go. Verona also has a fantastic Roman amphitheatre, which plays host to an opera festival each summer. Have you visited any festivals? Size isn't important. They can be music, theatre, book festivals, etc. I haven't really been to a music festival, I don't think. From what I remember, I did visit the inaugural party in the park at Hyde Park, which was a big day of different pop musical acts, and there were a lot of, you know, well-known. I think there were, Tom Jones was there, and who else? Oh, there were loads. You know, I think Robbie Williams maybe, and you know, it was all sorts, and it was great fun. Regarding other festivals, I've been to a few food festivals here locally, which have been good, and mostly, of course, here in the Czech Republic we have a lot of beer and wine festivals, and I've certainly been to my fair share of beer festivals. Next, you arrive in Venice. Venice is a Dorian grey city. Somewhere up there in the world's attic there's another place with a haggard, poxed and ravaged face of an unspeakable evil, and I suspect it's Cardiff by A.A. Gill. Perhaps that's a bit harsh on poor old Cardiff, but this quotation got me thinking, what's one of the most beautiful cities you have visited, and why did you think it was so beautiful? And of course, naturally, the next question would be, what was one of the ugliest cities you visited, and why? Also, did it have any redeeming features? Well, one of the most beautiful cities I have ever visited is quite close to me, and that is Prague. I do think Prague is absolutely stunning, certainly the centre part of it. You know, with Charles Bridge and the views from both banks of the Vltava and Prague Castle sitting at the top there. One of the ugliest cities I visited is Czech Republic's third city, which is Ostrava. To be fair, the centre isn't that bad. And its redeeming feature is the fact it has a very good nightlife and going out district, but it's an old industrial city, and it does feel like it from time to time. And you know, I was staying with friends, and you know, it definitely felt a bit shabbier, or much shabbier actually, than the part of the country I live in. And you know, it wasn't unusual to see people like, you know, dumpster diving and things like that. And there's a lot of graffiti, and you know, it was quite run down and very, very communistic in its look, with all these concrete buildings everywhere. So for me, it wasn't very attractive. I don't know if it's really the ugliest place I've ever been, but certainly it's one that comes to mind. So the patron saint of Venice is Saint Mark, or San Marco. The name Mark appears to be related to Mars, the god of war, and is often said that the meaning is therefore warlike. What is the meaning of your name, and do you know why you are called what you are called? Also, have you got a nickname you can share with us? Well, I've just told you the meaning of mine, supposedly. And I'm called Mark, I think my mum said, because she didn't like it so much when people shortened names, and Mark is a name you can't shorten. However, it is one you can lengthen. So when I was a child, it wasn't unusual to be called Marky, for example. And my nickname, well, my full name is Mark Tibbles, which was quite funny, and American people who watch this will appreciate the fact that I was often called Tibbles and Bits because of the well-known dog food. But usually my friends in England, they just shortened it from Tibbles to Tibbs, and they just called me that. And I'm sure some of them who've been my friends for many years, who call me that still, actually probably don't realise my name is Mark anyway, after so long. Okay, so it's between 80 and 100 euros to hire a gondola in Venice for that romantic trip through the canals. I think this is pretty expensive, especially as you only get between 25 and 30 minutes. What is one of the more expensive things you have done on your vacations? And alternatively, what is one of the cheapest? I think one of the most expensive things I did, it wasn't any kind of excursion or anything like that. It was buying a round of beers in Stockholm, Sweden, with some friends, because I think at the time it was around maybe something like £6 or £7. But this is, 20 years ago, £6 or £7 per beer. And I didn't realize that, of course. And, it was like easily a day's budget on just a couple of drinks. So, yeah, I learned my lesson though. And the cheapest, well, it would be visiting something for free. Visiting my sister. I got to see, we came across part of the old Berlin Wall. She was living in Berlin at the time, and we walked around that, and they had some information, and that was completely free and very interesting. Of course, even when I'm in London, I like to, if possible, visit some of the museums there. The British Museum is free, and it's pretty amazing, I think. So, sadly, it doesn't appear you can take a ferry anymore from Venice to Trieste. So you hop back on the train, you arrive in Trieste, which is Italian, but it has a different feel about it. You can feel its mix of Italian, Austrian, and Southern Slav influences. Prior to World War One, the city was part of Habsburg Austria. Its loss left Austria landlocked. How far away do you live from the sea, and how often do you visit the coast? Well, I live quite far from the sea because I live also in a landlocked country, the Czech Republic. It was fascinating. I read under communism there was a plan, and it was a serious plan, though ludicrous, to somehow dig a tunnel from the Czech Republic to the Adriatic coast to ensure some kind of travel and access to the sea. But obviously, for obvious reasons, it didn't come to pass. Though the Czechs bizarrely do hold a small parcel of land in Hamburg, which has gives them access to the sea. I don't know if they still have it, but certainly they had it up until a couple of years ago, which they rent, of course, from Germany, but it is classed as Czech land for the duration of their tenancy. So yeah, I'm quite far. I guess for me, I'd have to go all the way up to northern Poland, or south down to probably Slovenia, maybe, to get the nearest access to the sea. So we're talking over 600-700 miles, probably, I would say, or 1,200, something like that, kilometers. Trieste is home to the Victory Lighthouse, one of the tallest in the world, at 223 feet or 68 meters. But this wouldn't suit me, as I suffer terribly from a fear of heights, particularly those man-made heights. Have you got any phobias? Well, I've just told you mine. And what's the highest place you have visited, man-made or otherwise, not including air travel, of course? I'm not sure of the elevation, of course, of everywhere I visited, but certainly driving over some of the mountains in the Alps would have been up there, I think, with the highest places I visited, and we certainly felt it. And it was quite terrifying because we were in a rickety old car taking part in some kind of rally called a ramshackle rally, where we had to drive from Calais to Split in Croatia in a car that we bought for less than £200. So there you go. But yeah, I would say somewhere in the Alps would probably have been the highest I've been that I can think of, unless when I was traveling as a kid, we did a tour through the Rocky Mountains in America, and that might have been higher, but I don't remember it so well. Okay, so from Trieste, you travel on to Ljubljana, and one of the famous sites there is the Triple Bridge, which is a grouping of 3 bridges across the Ljubljanica River. Some say good and bad things come in threes. Are you superstitious? Yes, I am. Although I think it is quite irrational, I am quite superstitious about certain things. I don't like to talk about good things that are up and coming in case they get jinxed or cancelled or anything like that. I knock on wood or touch wood if I say something, and I have a few kind of bordering on OCD tendencies before I leave the house and things like that. Also, have you got a favourite trilogy, either film or book? Yes, my favourite trilogy in terms of books is a non-fiction work by Viscount Norwich, John Julius Norwich, which was A History of Byzantium. It's a fantastic trilogy. If you're interested in Byzantium at all, then I would certainly check it out. And in film, I think probably I would go with I really enjoyed the Lord of the Rings films rather. They were good fun, and it's the only trilogy I can think of apart from the original Star Wars, which I also enjoyed, but of course there are many more of them now. Finally, we move on from Ljubljana. You catch a train to Zagreb in Croatia, where we will pause for now before picking up our journey next time. Until then, please tag some people. Again, I'm just going to tag those who are watching it and those who've already started this journey with me. So please feel free to do it if you would like to. That's it from me. Do widzenia. And see you all next time. Take care, everybody. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.